when you look at the water workforce, specifically water utilities, in the next 5 to 10 years, that everybody talks about the gray tsunami, again, another word that's overused, another phrase that's overused, but it's real, right? You can walk into any utility and find 30, 40, 50% vacancy. When they are struggling to find operators, we have failed as an industry to make water sexy, to bring people in, to make them even understand, because we don't talk about water, to make them understand that they wouldn't have a life, a quality of life. They wouldn't have the products they're wearing. They wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for water. And I think that really, when you start having those conversations, you can make the industry something that next gen wants to come into.
Welcome to Distilled, brought to you by KTM. I'm your host, Will Sarni, founder and CEO of Water Foundry, and founder and general partner of Water Foundry Ventures. During each episode, we'll speak to global water leaders solving wicked water problems. We'll talk about their career, perspectives on key topics facing the industry, and what's next in the world of water. I am really excited, and I can tell that we're both really excited to have this conversation with my friend and colleague, and I would dare I say unreasonable person in a good way, in terms of tackling big issues and shaking up the status quo. So Melissa Meeker, CEO of the Water Tower, which I think is such a great name for any entity, Melissa.
Thank you. I worked hard at that one.
Well, I think you nailed it, actually. So Melissa, thanks so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. So tell me a little bit about the Water Tower and what you focus on. And, obviously the reason I ask is that I think you really are pulling a really important lever in the world of water that no one else, as far as I know, is really focusing on. And then I want to talk about how you got here and all that. But tell me about the Water Tower.
Okay. The Water Tower is a nonprofit outside, it's northeast of Atlanta. And, just to say it's a nonprofit really doesn't say anything. It's more than that. It's actual campus. So we have a beautiful building. In that building, you would find demonstration areas, state-of-the-art laboratories, classrooms, big conference space, co-working space for entrepreneurs and startups. And then third floor is all engineering firms, consulting firms. So what we're trying to do is create an ecosystem. I know that word can be really overused a lot, but that really does describe what we're trying to create. This collaboration around water. So it's having people here, it's having active R&D, it's having a lot of workforce training, which is a big underpinning of what we do, all in one space, so that you have experts teaching classes, you have hands-on things that kids can get out of and adults can get out of the classroom and get their hands on treatment systems and actually understand how they work. So it's just a different way to collaborate and solve tomorrow's challenges.
I agree with you. I think ecosystem is a much used and, if not abused, word, along with other words in the wonderful world of water. But you really have built something very unique. I mean, there are a couple of sort of similar constructs, but when you talk about workforce capacity building and really tackling that, I don't know of any other initiative that is really zeroing in on that key issue. And I know, personally, I tend to fall in love with technology and not think about the human side. But the human side is completely, I would say, undervalued. So can you talk a little bit about, workforce focus in the ecosystem that you built and how did that come about? I mean, what was the aha and what are the moving parts right now?
Yeah, and Will, if I don't get back to technology, ping me so that I can bring that up. But yeah, for me, workforce, it's because it's part of our recipe. Um, the when you look at the water workforce, specifically water utilities, in the next 5 to 10 years, that everybody talks about the gray tsunami again, another word that's overused, another phrase that's overused, but it's real, right? You can walk into any utility and find 30, 40, 50% vacancy. When they are struggling to find operators, we have failed as an industry to make water sexy, to bring people in, to make them even understand, because we don't talk about water, to make them understand that they wouldn't have a life, a quality of life. They wouldn't have the products they're wearing. They wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for water. And I think that really, when you start having those conversations, you can make the industry something that next gen wants to come into. So we at the Water Tower try and, I mentioned R&D activities. I mentioned demonstrating products and technologies and things like that. For me, that's what makes water sexy, right? So we use that as the core, the base, to bring others in. Yesterday, we had 220 high school students. It was quite crazy on the campus. We bring them in, we show them those things. We show them that, they may think they want to go into software and IT, but let's go in the SCADA room and see what's going on in terms of SCADA and all those kinds of things. So it's showing off the cool things that are coming so that we can capture this generation that was born with a cell phone in their hand and get them excited about water.
Yeah, we could really unpack that one quite a bit, as they say, but maybe later. So it's interesting. So I promise I'll weave in tech, because I do believe it's a key part in attracting younger generations to a sector that is perceived as being a complete yawner in the scheme of things, compared to, working for, a digital tech, a startup, and so on. But it's interesting you bring up digital as perhaps the biggest hook in all of this, in terms of attracting new talent. Two questions. So how is that working out? When you show that, well, this wastewater treatment plant is about as sophisticated as anything you will see. And then how do you tell me if there are other organizations that you're working with to sort of, scale your pipeline?
So two big questions. I believe it is working. A couple of weeks ago, we had a cybersecurity training course, and you bring a high schooler into cybersecurity, and all they want to do is hack something. We can actually let them hack into a system here and show them, you can work on the good side and make this system so that it's not hackable. I mean, that is a strong need that we have in the water industry. So it's things like that we're trying to, to bring together and show off. I do think that, I always start every pitch with utilities are so data rich and knowledge poor. And when we look at data and that kind of thing, anything we can do on predictive analytics, rather than being reactive all the time, which is the traditional way our industry has functioned, let's be predictive. Let's get in front of challenges. Let's optimize things to save energy. Let's, optimize chemical use. We can do all of these things. I met with a great company this morning that is all about optimization of individual processes. So how can we plug that in and, again, use it to sell a sexy story? In terms of organizations that we're working with, we have a big focus here locally, and I'm just getting ready to push this nationally, working with social service nonprofits. So Boy with a Ball, RED, which is Rehabilitation Enables Dreams. So these organizations that have unique focus areas. Boy with a Ball is focuses in the Latino population. So these are people who, English is their second language, and sometimes that's not great. How do we get them excited about water? Gwinnett just launched their first full Spanish-speaking ops team. So everyone on the team speaks Spanish. That opens up a whole world for them on workforce. And if I'm able to supply things bilingually, again, using on my social service nonprofits to bring them into the campus and show things off, we can create a whole new place to find workforce that we haven't looked at before.
That is really another term that's overused, out of the box. I mean, in terms of being really creative in outreach, that's brilliant. You talked about going national. Now you tell me more.
And it's funny because I think the last time you and I spoke, we talked about franchising the water tower, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. I bet I get a phone call a week, every other week, somebody wanting to understand our business plan, our funding model, how it works. Lately, it's been utilities reaching out, and utilities across the country. One utility in particular is West County Wastewater in Custer County, California. And I've been talking to them. They're super excited. So we're going to partner, and we're going to give them building plans for hands-on things that they can build locally. We're going to match them up with nonprofits in their community that do similar things to what we're doing. So we're going to guide them through that process. That's one. I have several.
Okay, good. Well, let's keep going. Is there an opportunity to bring people in from other parts of the country at this point? For
an
internship or a multi-week training program?
Absolutely. We regularly have large events and bring people in from all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
I could pull up a map right now and show you. We have hit all but 5 states have visited our facility. That's a lot. And then I have a long list of international. Yeah, it's great coverage. Yeah. We're just trying to get our word out, trying to do something different. It's funny. I actually get my hand slapped every once in a while because we're seen as competition. I'm like, no, we're not competing. I'm trying to augment and improve what's already out there and, just carry it to the next level. Again, if everybody was doing what they think they're doing, then we wouldn't have a need, and we clearly have a need. So there's room for everybody to come together and work together.
I'm surprised to hear that you got some pushback about you being a competitor, because, the utility leaders that I've talked to rightly point out, in my view, that the utility sector is not competitive. It can't possibly be, because it's so hyper local, and you're not poaching or nibbling at anyone else's business. For me, it's actually the best example of collective action and collaboration and knowledge sharing out there. Even when compared to the industrial sector, the private sector, what they're doing it with water stewardship and collective action and so on. I mean, just kind of running
it's not
with
the
this.
Utilities, Will. It's not the utilities. It's the people who train the utility staff.
Oh,
so it's
I see what you mean.
Yeah. But again, I'm not anywhere near that. It's silly. So I just say, okay, I'm just going to keep my head down and keep doing what I'm doing.
Thanks for the feedback. I'm going to keep going.
Which is pretty much how I've done my entire career. So.
And then I want to come back to the water tower in terms of path forward and, what you need, if you will. I think part of this conversation is obviously getting the word out on what you're doing, but also where you see this going and what do you need, and connecting you to people that could be helpful. But I believe I mentioned that I read your LinkedIn profile at length. And I thought I kind of knew your background, and I was really impressed from, the perspective of where you started your career and some of the interesting things that you've done along the way, and want to talk a little bit about that. How you got hooked on the world of water, and how you've navigated to some really interesting and impactful things. I know that you did a stint as a consultant.
I did.
So of course, want to hear more about that, because I love how the description sort of frames. Yeah, I'm out of here. I'm going to do something else. I don't know if you remember that.
I should probably go back into my LinkedIn presentation and delete some things.
No, come on. Hey, I'm glad I read it before you deleted anything.
Okay.
But, yes. So tell me, how did you get hooked on water as a thing?
Yeah. I was raised by a single mom, and we didn't have much money. And what we did was we went to the beach and walked the beach. So we still do that. In a different position, obviously, but yeah, I mean, that's just how I was raised. That was what I found peace in, and that's where I'm centered the most. So obviously, I was going to go into some kind of water. I actually took the marine route. I was thinking, playing with dolphins in Orlando, but worked at the Marine Lab. It was my first career. Incredible experience. I still have flashbacks of being on a research vessel in the middle of that. I always took the midnight shift, which you could probably dive in and think weird things. But I always took the midnight shift because it was lightning storms all over the place. I mean, it was just like, for me, it was pitch black, silence, and just lightning storms all over the Gulf of Mexico. It's just amazing. So yeah, I'm a late night lightning watcher. At least I was then. But then I figured out I needed to buy groceries, and the research with a biology, just a simple degree wasn't going to get me there. So I went into regulatory, environmental compliance, and just kind of grew up working for the state of Florida. And then I had an amazing boss who said, Melissa, if you ever want to move higher than where you are right now, you got to get out. And I did. I got out and worked at consulting. Loved it, and immediately went from a local position to a national role with a very large firm, and just loved that job. But I also play in politics on the side, and I was offered some appointed positions. I actually worked for three different governors in appointed positions, and love that side. And you can't really do that as a consultant in the environmental field because you can't supervise So I had to quit those jobs, and that's kind of where I went the rest of the track. So it was just extremely blessed with my opportunities. And I jumped. I never said no to a challenge, accomplished what needed to be accomplished, and then use that as a platform to get to something different and something exciting. So the water tower kind of brings all of that together.
One thing that you brought up, we have somewhat of a similar origin in that when I was at university, I got hooked on oceanography.
Oh, okay.
And I thought I was going to go into oceanography and then got a job with a groundwater consulting firm and switched from saltwater to freshwater. And I spent a lot of time on a research vessel in the Hudson River and the New York Bight, eastern Long Island. So I had a flashback moment when you were talking about being on a research ship. I loved it.
It's amazing experience. I think everyone should have to do some field time to understand why we're doing this policy stuff because of the things that we saw then. Yeah, I totally agree.
I absolutely agree about boots on the ground experience, field time. This is an ocean. This is a watershed. Yeah. That's where the water comes from. And obviously freshwater is connected to saltwater oceans. But I agree. So, in your programs, do you bring students and other interested parties to, outside the utility so they understand what the watershed looks like and watershed health and all
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and in
what sort
fact,
of
I mean, if
reactions do you get?
you haven't been to our campus yet, have you?
I,
We need
I
we
was
need to
waiting
fix
for
that.
you. Sounds great. That's an invitation. I'm in.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are surrounded by streams in the woods. I mean, the plant is right there, but the rest of the campus is basically preserve land. So we use that as our living classroom. Like I mentioned, we had students here yesterday for the annual student summit, and there were stations out on the stream. They were doing bug grabs and all kinds of things. So that's definitely a part of what we do. We have a lot of green infrastructure on the campus too, so they use that for instruction. We actually have an institute that comes in and teaches stormwater classes, and they go out and they dig stuff up and fix it, and test new technologies and ideas and different things. So it's about getting out and experiencing it. All of our workforce, all of our workforce stuff, again, when you look at WEF and AWWA, they have great training materials, but I'm not that person. I don't want to sit in a classroom for 40 hours and beat my head against the wall or fall asleep. There's not enough caffeine in the world to keep me awake for 40 hours learning this stuff. But if you take me out and you put me in the trailer out back that has a water treatment plant inside of it, and I see all the little processes, and then I overdose this one and I see what happens at the discharge, that's exciting stuff. I now understand the processes and how it works. So yeah, getting them out into the stream, getting them out into the green infrastructure and the stormwater systems, that's what we're trying to do.
I love that. Hands-on. It's for real. This is why you do what you do in the world of water. I think that's a great way to kindle some passion, with, again, students and other stakeholders. What do you need, and what are the challenges you see in the water sector, however, we want to define the water sector? What do you say?
Well,
we got plenty of time, Melissa.
Yeah. we still have challenges. Obviously we have challenges as an industry. Very conservative, very, very slow. I must say that 8 times a day to different companies and whatnot that come in to talk to us. It's just, it's not something, nobody's going to make a decision on something tomorrow that they heard about today. It's a process you have to go through. So for me, I'm just trying to get the industry, and that's another thing that we do here, again, demonstrating all those technologies, bringing utilities in so they can see the kind of information they can get out of data, or, how much more efficient their process would be, that kind of thing. That exposure is all about technology uptake at a utility. So I just want utilities to be open to a conversation. It's just be open to the conversation. I have a handful that I call and say, hey, any interest in this technology? Would you play with me as we figure out how to demonstrate it and see if it actually works? And I got a handful of them that are like, yeah, sure, come on. But a lot of them are, especially the small and mediums. The same person that's running the facility is cutting the grass and changing the light bulb. So we got to figure out how to transfer the really good stuff that's going on at our larger utilities and our more innovative ones to the mediums, I call them, so that they can also benefit from that. And that's not just federal money coming in. There's got to be other ways for us to help them.
Right. Do you see that issue changing over time? I mean, we all acknowledge that the utility sector is, I don't want to say slow, but risk adverse. And I think, for good reasons. Do you see that changing?
I mean, I certainly see people more receptive than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I got questions 6 years ago when I started planning this. What are you going to do? What? Who's going to take advantage of that? And, so thankfully I dive in, put my head down and keep going. We've already covered that ground.
I think yes, pretty clearly. Okay, so it's positive change, much more open innovation. how do we accelerate that? I mean, there's still, as they say, a lot of friction in terms of bringing innovative technologies to the utility sector, but I also see it in the industrial sector.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little bit faster, but there are similar challenges to why a company would not want to try something new because it's new.
Yep. Yep. I mean, how do we change that? Again, we're trying to do that by developing good, strong case studies with third party, if you can call me a third party, sort of validation or description of the actual data that doesn't have the spin on it. This is what we saw, and getting that message out. I think it's great when you look at all of our major water conferences. You see the innovation pavilion where good conversations are taking place. That wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. So there is a focus on getting the message out there. We're working on a research project right now with 35 utilities across the country that are helping to develop a roadmap of innovation. So what does the culture need to be inside? What kind of support do you need from the top? But it's really a bottom-up issue. How do you navigate that if you're a utility that wants to move in that direction? So hopefully that tools like that will help the industry. And then we just keep the conversation up and try and create great events like we're trying to do here to bring people in to show them what they can get out of being innovative.
Right. That makes perfect sense. It strikes me that we're making progress. It's, I think, just more of making technology accessible. Where do you see the industry going? Just, looking ahead.
Up.
Up at the tower, at the top of the tower.
Exactly. I think we're getting better about communicating with our constituents. I think you'll see a transformation of utilities, better reflecting the communities that they're in, which I think is important. How can you understand what they need if you have no idea what they need? So I think that's all good stuff. Again, I'm mainly focused on utilities and workforce, so that's kind of where my brain goes. So communicating, that kind of thing. But I do think that big picture, as utilities, we have a challenge in that the buck always stops with the water utility. PFAS, perfect example. But
right.
They didn't cause it. They just got it. And now they're on the regulatory side going to be the ones saddled with that. So that's another big focus for us is how can we push technology to the point where it's actually affordable. Not going to go out and build a whole new plant just for this one regulation. But if there's a bolt-on technology we can do that'll address that in a less expensive way, but still accomplish the goal, then that's a technology we want to make sure gets to the industry. But
makes sense.
PFAS is today's issue. Tomorrow we'll have another emerging contaminant. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
job security. It's job security, Will.
When I started my career, doing groundwater work, the co-founder and CEO of the company, Garrett E. Miller, he said, "Look, if you're interested in water, you'll have a career for the rest of your life because it's about public health." And
yep.
I think about that often, and David Miller was spot on. He was right. And I was very fortunate to show up at that moment in time and get hooked, get the bug, if you will.
That's right.
Yeah. I love what you're doing with the workforce focus. I think it's so, underappreciated. And I will say the ecosystem that you have built. So I think we maybe touched on it very briefly. Do you see an opportunity to engage with the private sector, the food and beverage manufacturers, for example, on how how do they ensure that they have professionals moving in the world of water, and lessons learned from the utility sector? So are you seeing a little bit of an opportunity there?
Yeah, definitely. It's like, we train water and wastewater operators, but all of the, private industry has the same thing. If around here it's chickens and beer and, everything. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a great synergy for the kinds of things that we're doing. In terms of the workforce training. I also think that there's a great opportunity for technology transfer, right? So we actually have a couple new board members coming on first of next year that have some industrial background. So I'm hoping that they can help me in that space, because it's not an area that I'm that familiar with. But I mean, right here we have Coca-Cola and, Sweetwater, right, and, all kinds of things. So there's certainly opportunity. Yeah, one of the major corporations that we have here is Cox Industries. And you may not know this, but they have the largest car, they do car auctions, and they have the largest parking lots in the United States that they are responsible for managing stormwater and washing. So talk about a stormwater innovation and water treatment process stuff. Just a great potential partner.
I think that's great. Okay, we'll talk about that also. Might be able to help you
okay,
on the private sector side. So, Melissa, this was wonderful, and as usual, learned a lot. I look forward to seeing you there at an event or just a tour. Yeah. So, thanks so much for your time and perspective. It's very sincerely inspirational in terms of what you're doing and the impact that you've had and where you headed. You'll never retire.
Thank you so much. Probably not.
Yeah,
it's just too much fun. I'm having fun. Yes, but thank you for the conversation, Will. I've enjoyed it.